I'd like to call our technology committee meeting to order. Happy Friday, y'all.
Happy Friday.
Okay, just so I know who's here, can we call roll, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell,
Here.
Supervisor Perez,
Is not here at the moment, but if you would start with item 2, he has a conflict on that anyhow.
Councilmember Robinson,
Here.
Supervisor Solis,
Here.
Councilmember Buscaino,
Here.
and Marilyn Cowan is absent.
Okay, thank you so much. So with that, let us begin on item number 1.
Hello, I'm Lisa Narasola, and I'm presenting for agenda item 1. Staff is proposing to execute a contract for expansion of hydrogen fueling station. And by way of background, UC Irvine is one of the highest capacity hydrogen stations in California, and it's operating beyond its design capacity by getting more than one delivery of hydrogen per day. And it's not able to accommodate buses right now because the demand for light-duty fueling is also growing there. The station has been in operation since 2003, and it was upgraded for dual pressure capacities in 2007, and it was upgraded for retail fueling to allow credit card sales in 2015 with co-funding by CEC and our Clean Fuels Fund. And so it's now, those pictures were basically from the station opening. And so the proposal is that UCLI will solicit competitive bids for the capacity expansion to 800 kilograms per day, which is about 4 times the current delivery capacity. They'll be using liquid delivery. It will still dispense gaseous fuel, and there'll be increased storage to accommodate additional vehicles and improve back-to-back refueling performance. So the fueling positions, currently there's one dispenser with 2 nozzles, but it can only accommodate 1 vehicle at a time. The fueling positions will be expanded to 4. There'll be 2 dispensers on an island, or could be 2 islands, depending on the award, who the award goes to. And there'll be 4 nozzles for fueling high pressure and 1 for fueling lower pressure for the buses. So it can fuel either 4 light-duty vehicles at the same time or 3 light-duty vehicles and a bus at the same time. So public use will continue 24/7. The buses will be scheduled to refuel at night. So UCI has a fuel cell bus that runs around on their campus for students and the community. So this station will continue to meet the SB 1505 requirements for 33% renewable hydrogen. And for the cost share, the proposed projects, the MSRC recently approved $1 million for their share of funding. The CEC is anticipated to take this to their business meeting in November and is requesting $400,000 from CEC. And for this request, we're requesting $400,000 from Clean Fuels funds. So the project costs to upgrade the station are expected to be $1.8 million. And with that, the staff recommends executing a contract with UCI to cost share the expansion of their hydrogen fueling station to support both college campuses. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Thank you so much. Colleagues, any questions on this item? We are now joined by Mr. Perez, Supervisor. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, sir.
Any questions? Okay, hearing none, do we entertain a motion to approve item 1 that's before us?
I'll move to approve in spite of the fact it's UC Irvine.
I'll second.
Second.
I did not want to go there, but thanks for any member of the public wish to speak on item number 1? We do have a motion and a second to approve item 1. All right, seeing none. No cards, thank you. So we need a roll call vote, please, on item 1.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell,
Yes.
Supervisor Perez,
Yes.
Councilmember Robinson.
Aye.
Supervisor Solis.
Aye.
Councilmember Buscaino.
Aye.
Motion passes 5 ayes.
Fantastic. Thank you. Okay, let's now move on to item number 2, which I believe myself and Mr. Perez, Supervisor, have a conflict. I'm going to recuse myself on item number 2 because of a campaign contribution from Clean Energy within the past 12 months. I will now defer to Vice Chair Judy Mitchell. Mayor Pro Tem, the floor is yours. If you can just take control of item number 2.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I will also, if I may, also make the same statement. I am also recusing myself from agenda item number 2 because of a campaign contribution from CR&R Incorporated within the past 12 months. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, I also just want to disclose that I don't have a financial interest, but I'm required to identify for the record that I serve on the Board of Supervisors for Los Angeles County, which is involved in this item. Thank you.
And I don't have a financial interest either, but I'm required to identify for the record. I'm a board member of the California Air Resources Board, which is involved in this matter.
Okay,
And Dwight, your turn.
I'm recusing myself from item number 2 because of a financial interest in Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railway Company, which is materially affected by this item. So
Okay,
it's left.
so we don't
Mr.
have a
Vice Chair,
quorum now.
Since we don't have a quorum, my recommendation would be that the remaining member or members, if there is a concurrence between those two members, state a position that if they want the item to move forward, or if they don't want the item to move forward, just state that that's the position of the two members.
So move forward to the board,
Yeah.
basically.
If
Okay.
that's your preference.
They don't have to leave the room, they're just recusing themselves. Okay, all right. Okay, so who's left? Me and
Solis, Hilda.
Supervisor Solis, okay.
Yeah, I have no problem moving it on.
I don't either. So let's,
Do you want to hear the item?
pardon? Do we want to hear
Would you like
it?
to hear it? It's a good item.
Oh, okay. Are you the presenter?
No, I'm not.
We could
Well, it's-
split the item.
But we can move it. It's your.
I think we just move the item. It's our usual Carl Moyer application. So we'll move the item forward onto the board. Do we need a motion for that or just a consensus between the two of us?
Consensus.
Yeah, because it's only two members, you
Yeah.
would have enough to have a quorum, which would be required for the meeting. So I think it's sufficient that you've already stated that it's the position of both of you to move the item. To let
Correct.
the full board hear that.
Does there need to be any roll call or anything here to identify the two of us? Okay, good. All right, so Supervisor Solis and I have decided to move this onto the board.
Moved and seconded, right?
All right,
By consensus. Okay.
now back to regular scheduling.
Back to our chair.
Thank you. With that, let's now take item number 3. Item number 3 is now before us.
Mr. Chairman, I do not have a financial interest, but I am required to identify for the record, I'm a member of the California Air Resources Board, which is involved in this agenda item. And that will also be true of agenda item 4, that I need to identify that for the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. Any others? Okay, hearing none. Ms. White, the floor is yours.
Hi, good afternoon. With this item, staff is seeking board approval to establish a special revenue fund, recognize the revenue and execute agreements for the VW Environmental Mitigation Program and transfer funds. By way of background, the Volkswagen settlement program resulted in $1.2 billion to the state of California. Of these funds, $423 million has been allocated for the Environmental Mitigation Trust. This is the program that's known as Appendix D in the consent decrees. And for these funds, ARB has been designated as the beneficiary. And back in May of this year, they approved a beneficiary mitigation plan. In this plan, ARB identifies 5 eligible mitigation actions. And these are shown here in the pie chart and the approximate distribution of the funds per these mitigation actions. These projects include mostly scrap and replace for the heavy-duty sector. And through this plan, ARB has committed to achieve 10,000 tons of NOx reductions over a 10-year period. These funds are expected to be available starting in 2019. This slide shows an overview of the mitigation actions. You'll see each of the mitigation actions described here on the left. We call these project categories. And then the proposed technologies, these are the types of technologies that would be fundable under the program. And the dollars of allocation for each mitigation action, as well as the lead air district. These are the air districts that have been identified to administer the funds statewide. As you can see, South Coast SCAQMD has been identified for 2 of these mitigation actions for a total of 150 million. And these programs—
Mr. Chair, if I may just interrupt very quickly, we can't see the slides on this end, unfortunately. Just to give you a heads up.
Supervisor, can we address supervisor concerns on the IT issues?
And you can keep going with the presentation. I just want to make sure I can catch up with you all.
Sure, thank you, sir.
Mr. Supervisor, just to confirm,
Okay,
it
slide
sounds like
9.
you're still able to hear us, so
Okay.
anybody there would be able to hear us as well, right?
I can hear you, I just can't see the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
I'd like to refer you to slide 3 in the hard copy. If that's available to you, that's the slide that I'm presenting at this time. And I just wanted to highlight in this slide that South Coast SCAQMD has been identified the administrator for 2 of the funding categories. These include the zero-emission Class 8 freight and port drayage trucks, as well as a combustion freight and marine projects category for a total of 150 million. South Coast will be administering these 2 funding categories on a statewide basis. Oh, sorry, slide 4, staff proposes to establish the VW Mitigation Special Revenue Fund and recognize revenue up to 150 million for these 2 funding categories previously mentioned. And we would also need to execute a project agreement with CARB to administer and implement these categories. And we are proposing to also execute an MOA with the other air districts as needed to help with implementation of this program statewide. That would include areas such as equipment inspections as well as outreach. And we also have a need to transfer funds by way of a reimbursement for the administrative costs that will be incurred to implement this program. Next slide, slide 5. The proposed timeline, this program will be implemented over a 10-year period. The first installment of program funds are anticipated in 2019. The first installment will include 30% of the available funds for the zero-emission Class 8 freight and port drayage trucks category, as well as 50% of the funds for the combustion freight and marine projects category. And for these 2 categories, we're planning to release solicitations in mid-2019. We'll come back to the board around June-July timeframe to release the solicitations. The zero emissions Class 8 freight and port drayage trucks category will be released as a first-come, first-served solicitation, whereas the other category, the combustion category, will be a competitive solicitation. And there is a requirement that we spend at least 50% of these funds for projects benefiting disadvantaged and low-income communities. This slide shows the funding summary. Slide 6 shows the funding summary. And the purpose of this slide is just to show the total program funding for the 2 categories that we will administer, as well as what the first installment of funds will look like starting in 2019. As you can see, on top of the project funds, we'll be receiving 10% of the costs for administrative costs that are incurred through the program. So in conclusion, the recommended actions are to establish the VW Mitigation Special Revenue Fund and recognize the revenue up to $150 million into this fund to administer and implement the categories identified in the beneficiary mitigation plan, and also authorize the executive officer to execute an agreement with CARD. This is our grant agreement with CARD to implement the categories, as well as an MOA with the other air districts to assist in certain tasks that are needed to administer this program statewide. And finally, transfer up to 10% of the total cost of these programs to reimburse administrative costs that will be incurred. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Any questions, colleagues?
Mr. Chair?
Ms. Solis, floor is yours.
Yes. So I wanted to go back to the slide where you have the breakdown of funding that's going to be allocated on light-duty zero-emission vehicles infrastructure. I was hoping that we could look at providing more incentive, more funding to the electric, vehicle chargers. And when I look at maps, we just approved an item for hydrogen fuels. We don't have a whole lot going on in our district, and likewise, we want to incentivize people in low income, underrepresented communities to really be able to access all of these particular items, equipment. So I would just ask if there's any way we could maybe emphasize that more, or place more emphasis by putting more money in that category for electric chargers, because there are very few people that own, that where we can see on the map that we just approved items, that folks are really able to purchase hydrogen vehicles to begin with, because they are very costly.
Supervisor,
So I would just,
if I could just add, what you see here has been negotiated between CARB, US EPA, and Volkswagen. So these are the pots. There's no way that we can go back, that we, as the local air district, could try to do this. This was all part of
it says, right, okay, but it says or, it says electric charge or, right?
But
So,
the pot
okay,
remains the same.
Yeah.
So within that, we have
okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. But as we move ahead, I think it's important for us, AQMD, to look at how we allocate funding resources, and always thinking about when we talk about trying to place funding in low-income areas, we should think about AB 617 and really, pushing these ideas out into communities that really haven't seen any benefits yet.
Supervisor, this is
That's all.
Matt. I'd just like to add, so we agree with you, and as part of our Replace Your Ride program, the EFMP program, we do offer incentives for installing charging infrastructure when they purchase a plug-in electric vehicle. And so as far as that program is concerned, we're trying to push out the infrastructure in tandem with the electric vehicle. But I think what you're referring to is really more public charging. And so we just went to the board last month to approve a DC fast charging project, and we'll look for continued opportunities with the Energy Commission to do that.
And
Right.
Supervisor, I'll just mention that this is one pot of the VW money. There's another pot of money that is the settlement funds. I think it's Appendix C. That's $800 million over a period of time, and 5 cycles, divided into 5 cycles. And VW just released Cycle 2 guidelines. You could find that online at Electrify America. And you can get in touch with them and talk about projects that you think are important for your communities.
Okay. That's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other questions, colleagues?
I just have a quick one, Mr.
Yes,
Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
So with the funding that we ended up getting, how did it compare with what we were hoping to get versus what some of the other districts were hoping to get? I mean, I know that, there was a lot of negotiation. I want to tell you how much I appreciate all the time that you and the staff put into getting what we could and how we could so far. But
But the money that's here is assigned to a certain district to administer. It doesn't mean we won't get that.
Sure.
So,
Or we'll get that.
pardon?
Doesn't mean we will or won't get it. We have to
We have to apply for it.
fleets apply for
But just
it.
because it's signed to San Joaquin Valley or Bay Area doesn't mean we can't.
So like
Dip our fingers into the
the
pot.
Class 8 trucks that we're
Yeah.
responsible for going throughout the state and the electric infrastructure or hydrogen fueling that's going throughout the state, they're
That's right.
administering the funds, so. okay.
And I will
All right.
say that one thing I was fighting for at CARB was to have more money in the combustion freight marine projects category because that involved low NOx trucks. And unfortunately, I didn't have any support at the CARB board. They wanted to go to a zero emission on
Ron
electric.
Roberts supported it.
It doesn't mean that there isn't money in other pots, though. I mean, we have Carl Moyer and other places where we can apply for those funds. So, but I was disappointed that we didn't get more money here for, they only put 60 million in for low NOx trucks. And the whole focus was on zero emissions.
So we did get the proviso that we could come back to ARB if funds weren't spent and then get funds transferred over. So that's how we think that we'll get more money into that pot. And there, just to give you some background on the negotiations, there was an original thought of just doing a straight allocation to each district. But we felt that we could be much more competitive in all of the categories. So the districts had actually proposed that we sort of look at an administration where we'll just manage these pots. But as Mayor Mitchell said, that doesn't exclude us from going those funds. So we're trying to make sure that each district has the ability to recover administrative costs. So even though San Joaquin has the buses and the zero emission trans, things like that, we're going to get a large part of that.
Sure.
And so it's really important to recognize that just because it says 150 for us and it's the largest amount, it's our goal that we're going to get more than that.
Sure.
But it's like Matt said, it's not guaranteed. It's a battle every time we get down to funding on all of these issues.
Okay.
But we're trying.
I won't take any more time on it, but I'd like to learn a little bit about how that negotiation, I guess, is working between the districts to make sure that we're getting what we need. And so
On this
maybe,
program.
yeah, on this program. So maybe, you know, I don't know.
Maybe a
It sounds like
periodic
maybe
report
that's still
back
in
to
flux.
us.
Who knows?
It's a bruising battle every day.
All right. Okay. Well, like I said, I'd love to hear more about it.
Yeah.
Judy, thank you for your comments. I appreciate those.
Thank you. Any member of the public like to speak on item 3?
None here.
Okay, seeing none. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve item 3 that's before us.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make the motion, but I just wanted to echo the sentiment by Supervisor Solis surrounding underserved communities and trying to understand all the pots of monies. Quite frankly, in our areas out here, especially in the 4th district, since it's so vast, 5,000 square miles, folks in underserved areas do use public transportation. So, I'd like to understand that as well, as far as our Sunline transportation efforts and moving from, diesel to hydrogen and natural gas efforts. All those pots of money that exist right now, can we also support public transportation out here in the region as well as other areas throughout South Coast? So I just want to put that out there. I make the motion.
Thank you, Supervisor.
I'll second it.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell,
Yes.
Supervisor Perez,
Yes.
Councilmember Robinson.
Aye.
Supervisor Solis,
Aye.
Councilmember Buscaino.
Aye.
Motion passes 5 ayes.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 4. Mr. Impoliti.
Yes. My name is Joseph.
Buon pomeriggio, come stai, bello?
Bueno. My item today is on developing and demonstrating zero-emission heavy-duty trucks, freight handling equipment, and EV infrastructure, as well as renewable energy. Moving on to slide 2, a little background. For years, we've been working with Volvo Group North America to develop diesel hybrid trucks All the while, we've been encouraging them to take the next step into a zero-emission trucks. Finally, in May of this year, Naveen and I began working with Volvo and our partners at GNA to develop a proposal for a CARB solicitation under the Low Carbon Transportation Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund investments. Our hard work and Volvo's willingness to make some adjustments to create a winning proposal paid off, and in September, CARB announced a preliminary award of nearly $45 million to support our project to develop these zero-emission trucks, some freight handling equipment, as well as EV infrastructure powered by renewable energy. On to the third slide. The proposal that Volvo is presenting and what they're calling their low-impact green heavy transport solutions project, the LIGHTS project, will deliver up to 23 heavy-duty battery electric vehicles, up to 29 off-road battery electric vehicles, including yard trucks and electric fork trucks, up to 58 non-proprietary chargers, both level 2 and DC fast charge, as well as approximately 1.9 megawatts of solar power. These trucks and infrastructure will be demonstrated at 5 sites. Currently proposed sites are Chino, in Fontana, La Mirada, Ontario, and Placentia. On the next slide, the project is going to offer rental access to 15 of these vehicles, heavy-duty battery electric vehicles, at both the Fontana and the La Mirada locations. And the reason for this is to lower the barrier to entry for fleets seeking cleaner transportation options. The rental is non-specified routes for discretionary services will allow cleaner transportation for a radius of approximately 50 miles from each facility. Given the critical corridor in which the vehicles will operate, this supports the cleaner goods movement in a wide range of sensitive areas, including overburdened I-710 corridor. At any given time in this area, this project was going to deliver 15 zero-emission trucks operating in place of diesel trucks. In this area of the region, it covers nearly all of the disadvantaged communities in the South Coast Basin, approximately over 1,300 disadvantaged communities in Los Angeles, San Bernardino, and Riverside counties covered by the radius. There's an average pollution burden of 81.5%, affecting approximately 6.1 million Californians. The project is going to provide significant public health benefits and environmental relief for the communities that are consistently subjected to diesel emissions from goods movement between the ports, the intermodal facilities, as well as the good delivery locations throughout the LA basin. On to the next slide. Some of the unique aspects of the innovation that this project is going to bring and the market initiatives. First of all, Volvo will be introducing their first Class 8 battery electric truck here in the South Coast. A requirement of the solicitation from CARB was that we employ a third-party data collector, so we chose UCR CSERT because of their experience in the area of heavy-duty vehicles, as well as their resources that they have, such as a heavy-duty dynamometer, which are required by the ARB for the testing in the project. Another unique innovation of the project will be the network chargers. They will have controls that will determine when and where and how to charge the vehicles and the cargo handling equipment. The software will use the vehicle needs, what they need at any particular given time, the pricing of the energy, facility readiness, time of day, and the utility status to determine how to charge the vehicles for the lowest impact to the grid, as well as the lowest cost to the operators. Volvo Light tells a compelling story for zero emissions throughout the goods movement supply chain. With Class 8 rigid trucks and tractors augmented by zero-emission cargo handling equipment for all the project sites. From the Port of Long Beach, Volvo's battery electric drayage trucks will haul a container to the Inland Empire. There it'll be staged by a electric yard tractor and then unpacked with electric fork trucks. Then it will be repacked. Portion of the goods will be put onto Class 6 Volvo electric trucks and delivered to locations throughout the basin. And then the rest of it will be hauled regionally by another Volvo electric truck. When telling the story of a day in the life of zero-emission cargo freight, it'll be further enhanced by the solar energy that's going to be produced at 2 of the locations. And this energy will be used to charge the vehicles. Moving on to the next slide, the project cost here. First, the Volvo project. In that project, CARB would be contributing about $41.5 million. Volvo and their partners, which will contribute both cash and in-kind contributions of just of about $41.5 million. And then we are requesting, staff is requesting, that AQMD contribute $4 million to the project. And now that amount could be reduced if Southern Cal Edison's Make Ready project funds are approved by the CPUC, then that amount of $4 million will be reduced. The total project cost for Volvo will be $87.2 million. Now the UCR data collection project cost, CARB would contribute just over $1 million for that, and then UCR would put in $200,000 of in-kind contributions for a total project cost of approximately $1.2 million. Now, in addition to this, we're also getting some assistance from our Clean Fuels Connection partners. We're going to add $178,500 for administration funds. We're going to add that to an existing contract to provide project implementation support for the program. Finally, the recommended actions is to recognize the CARB revenue of approximately $45 million into our Special Revenue Fund 67, transfer $14 million from the Clean Fuels Fund. $4 million of that is AQMD's, would be AQMD's cost share, and $10 million as a temporary advance of funds. Also execute contracts from the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Project Special Fund, one with Volvo in the amount not to exceed $45.5 million, and with UCR CSERT an amount of just over $1 million. Then we're going to ask her to reimburse the general fund for up to $1.9 million from the Greenhouse Gas Special Revenue Fund. This is for the administrative cost that ARB is allocated for us for AQMD. And then the transfer of $178,500 from the Special Revenue Fund into the Clean Fuels Fund for the Clean Fuels Connection contract for administrative services. And then finally, we're asking to authorize our executive officer to redistribute some of the administrative funds, if needed, to augment project funds with Volvo on an as-needed basis to meet the project goals. And of course, this will be contingent upon CARB approval. And that's it.
Thank you, Joseph. Colleagues, this item before us is historic. This is one of the largest awards we've ever gotten at AQMD through CARB. So Matt, This is a shining moment for you and your team. You make the anteaters proud, as well as even though we're talking USR here, UCR rather. But nonetheless, this is exciting, what's before us, and I do want to congratulate the entire leadership team. So with that, any questions, colleagues?
Mr. Chair, I just had 2 questions.
Yes.
Yes, on page 6 of the report, it has a footnote there on possible funds from Southern Cal Edison. If they are approved by the Public Utilities Commission. Am I missing something, or can you explain that, staff?
They have
there's funds.
submitted a proposal to the CPUC, and this is quite a large proposal that covers a lot of electrification of transportation, but one of the items is there is a make-ready project for EV infrastructure. And so if that's approved, they are partners, they're going to partner with us in this project to supply some of the funding for EV infrastructure.
Good. And what could that potentially be? And what figures are we talking about?
Actually, I think it's about $653,000.
Good. Okay.
It kind of depends.
Well, that's an important.
It depends on how extensive the infrastructure. For example, they have to install lines that go from a transformer to the facility. So it depends on how much trenching they have to do. But it could be on the order of 600 to even $1 million, depending on how much infrastructure they have to actually put in.
That's great. And one just last question. As we think about chargers being placed in different parts of our communities, I'm wondering, we have a large, obviously, hub of trucks that bring cargo up from the ports in Commerce, City of Commerce. And I'm just wondering if we're taking a look at any, the low-income impacted communities where it could be beneficial to maybe have staff take a look at, if not right now, but in the future, because that does, in my opinion, come up as one of those hot spots along the 710.
Yeah, so you're right. It's not considered under this project, but we will look at that as a potential future project.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Just have one comment.
Sure.
Yes, please. Supervisor?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Along those lines, I appreciate the efforts that have been done before I came on board, and thank you so much for all the great work you've done. And thanks, Joseph, for the report. I'm just wondering, you mentioned UC Riverside, you mentioned Riverside, but I didn't hear anything about the Coachella Valley. And I'm just wondering, is there anything direct or indirect as to how we could benefit as well from these efforts, especially knowing that the 10 freeway goes through the Coachella Valley and continues into Arizona and Imperial County, and we do have quite a bit of diesel coming through here, and this is also an underserved area. And so I just want to put that out there. Is there anything that you can relate to me, get me up to date regarding directly or indirectly how this is going to benefit the Coachella Valley? And it might be another day for us to have this conversation, but I wanted to make sure I put it out there.
Yeah, we appreciate that, Supervisor. For this project, it's not necessarily benefiting the Coachella Valley, unfortunately, but there are other projects that we've entertained. For example, Professor Kreitz could tell you that we've been strong supporters of Sunline Transit and helping them with their hydrogen infrastructure. But as we always try to do is balance the support for all 4 counties, so we'll continue to look at how we might benefit the Coachella Valley.
If I could just add, this will benefit the Coachella Valley. We're looking at technology deployment. What we're looking at ultimately is reducing emissions that are transported to the Inland Empire and Coachella Valley. So Coachella Valley will see benefits from this project through the demonstration and through the accelerated deployment. We think about these disadvantaged communities in all areas throughout the basin. And it's at the forefront, and I just want to assure all members of the committee that we always think about that. We can look for specific projects of benefit. But overall, we're looking at the positive benefits that are going throughout the entire region. Thank you.
I can appreciate that, Wayne, and obviously I'd like to follow up. The concern obviously at the end of the day is that we're all the way over here, and the issue of equity for me is very important, like it is for all of us. And
Sure.
so I just wanted to raise that, and I look forward to further conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Mr. Robinson, do you have a question, comment?
Yeah, just a quick one. I've made this comment a number of times, but each time it comes up, I like to talk about cargo weight and make sure that we're looking at that. And I hope I don't misrepresent the point in any way, but I believe Dr. Liu and Supervisor Rutherford were out meeting with a package carrier. I can't remember if it was UPS or FedEx. And they were talking about, I think it was the 12-liter low NOx natural gas engines and some of the challenges they have getting to Vegas going up the pass. So that's just one of the, when they're at an 80,000 pound load. Now, if they're at 60,000 pounds, definitely not as much of an issue. So I think it's really important that we keep looking at that. So it's a typical statement I make, but I just want to keep reinforcing it.
Should we reiterate our response to it?
Feel free. Feel free.
So we agree with you 100%. We think the 12 liter is good for short haul in some regions, but as you go interstate or intrastate, you probably need a liquid fueled, higher energy density fuel. And that's why we're sponsoring a ultra low NOx diesel 15 liter engine.
Yeah.
To get to 0.02 grams or 0.05 or 0.02. So we agree with you and we're looking for solutions. The next solution would be a fuel cell where you can have longer range and then pretty high torque and power.
Sure.
So we're looking at all those options, but yeah, we agree. It may not fit every application.
Absolutely. And with this particular one, you know, with battery electric, it's what kind of drain do you get on the battery at different weights? I'm sure that you're looking into all that.
It's exactly why Volvo is deploying pre-commercial vehicles and then the later commercials, and we'll put them in the rental fleet.
Absolutely. And it's frustrating sometimes that the truck sales side, they were selling the 9 liter low NOx natural gas to haul 80,000 pounds, and then they were selling the 12 liters to haul 80,000 pounds. So, you know, that's one of the challenges out there that you know, is faced in reality. So, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, can I make a comment?
Sure.
We've been working with Volvo for many years in developing the technology, but I would have to say it's the trip that Board Member Mitchell made to Sweden that kind of sealed the deal with their leadership. They saw how that our executive officer and one of our board members was also an ARB board member, went all the way to Sweden to visit with their CTO. It showed how serious we were in developing a technology with them, and that really accelerated the path. And then they, instead of doing a plug-in hybrid, which we thought they were going to propose, they went all in with a battery electric. So, you know, even though
Wonderful.
I would love to take credit for it, and our team would love to take credit for it, but it really is the leadership of this board.
Appreciate that, Matt. International partnerships are personal. That face-to-face is very important. Wayne, thanks again for leading this effort and that delegation. You know, keep in mind, these are all demonstrations, but as we march toward a zero-emission port complex, the items before us, like item number 4, are crucial in demonstrating the feasibility of a zero-emission technology. And just really blessed to serve alongside each and every one of you with this amazing team to march toward that effort and do what's best for this basin. So with that, any other questions from colleagues? Anyone, a member of the public like to speak on item 4, please come forward. Okay, do we have a motion to approve item 4?
I'll move it.
I'll second.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell,
Yes.
Supervisor Perez,
Yes.
Councilmember Robinson,
Aye.
Supervisor Solis,
Aye.
Councilmember Buscaino.
Aye,
Motion passes 5 ayes.
thank you. Okay, with that, let's now move to item number 5. We have Mr. Oshinuga.
Yes, Chair. Good afternoon, Chair
Good afternoon.
and members of the committee. My name is Adiwale Oshinuga. The item before you is to approve awards for heavy-duty diesel-grade truck replacement projects. Back in November of last year, I was here discussing this particular project. At that time, the board, of course, approved the project, and recognize about $1,050,000 grant from US EPA under the Diesel Emission Reduction Act. And that money was supposed to be used for replacement of heavy-duty diesel truck projects. At the same time, the board issued a program announcement to solicit applications from fleets here in the district to replace 10 heavy-duty diesel trucks with near-zero CNG trucks. Secondly, also to sell, that is the fleets here, to sell the 10 heavy-duty diesel trucks with 2 Washington fleets to displace older, dirtier trucks for no more than $30,000. And then, of course, as part of the EPA requirement, the trucks that have been displaced in Washington states are supposed to be scrapped. And also, at the same time, the board also awarded $25,000 to Puget Sound Clean Air Agency to help us to implement the program in Washington State. The announcement was, of course, held open for about 4 months and then closed on February 28th of this year. Between February 28th and today, we've been negotiating not only with Puget Sound in terms of implementing the program, but also we had a series of meetings with the fleets in Washington State to make sure that they understand very clearly what the guidelines of the program is, because as you guys know, it's very complex in terms of how we implement it. So the proposal actually has 4 major aspects, and I would like to discuss each of those aspects with you. The first one is, of course, to have the fleets here in the basin to replace 10, 20, 12, or newer heavy-duty trucks with a near-zero CNG trucks. The second aspect of this is for them to then transfer and sell those replaced 10 trucks to Washington State, at which to displace 1995 to 2006 model year diesel truck. Now, because we wanted to incentivize the Washington fleets, we limit the sale price of each of those 2012 and newer trucks to no more than $30,000. As I said earlier, as part of the EPA requirements, the displaced 1995 to 2006 model year trucks were supposed to be scrapped. Now, in terms of the funding, we are going to be providing the fleets here in the basin $100,000 per the new CNG trucks they purchase in lieu of the old 2012 or newer trucks they transferred to Washington State. And then they will also be receiving an additional $30,000 up to $30,000 from Washington State fleets per truck they transfer to Washington State. Now, we don't want to get involved in the transaction between the 2 fleets. So that's why we established the program in such a way that the transfer of that fund will have to be between the 2 fleets. And finally, in order to make the process smooth, we are requiring both both fleets to enter into legally binding agreement. In that agreement, we wanted to make sure that it becomes an instrument in which we can regulate or implement the program. Make sure, for example, that the 1995 to 2006 trucks are scrapped. We want to make sure that the 2012 and newer trucks will never re-enter into the basin. And we want to also make sure that there's some established guidelines, for example, in terms of the warranty of the old vehicles, in terms of the condition of the vehicles, and in terms of whether or not the scrapping process is done by a regulated dismantler. So in terms of how do we select these folks, we had received 3 applications from 3 fleets here in South Coast by the closing date. The 3 applications received amounted to 20, of course, 20 replacement program. The breakdown of those replacement programs are listed on the slide. You can see the MDB submitted 10 replacement projects. National Freight Industry submitted 9, and then of course West Coast Warehousing and Trucking submitted 1 truck. We, after reviewing the applications, 13 truck projects were moved forward. Of course, the 13 applications were projects were selected from those 3 fleets. The 7 that were not moved forward was because the cost was very cost prohibitive. The maintenance cost was very prohibitive. These are mainly the international trucks. As you guys may remember, international trucks do not have the SCR NOx strategy, and therefore it requires a lot of retardation of the engine, thereby creating a much higher maintenance cost for that truck. And also, that of course is reflected in the truck market price. So for example, an international truck was selling for about $20,000. So that's the reason why we couldn't move this truck forward. And then in terms of the funding, here we have a total of $2,050,000. 1.05 of those came from EPA DERA fund, and the remaining 1 million is coming from the individual fleets. Finally, the staff recommended action is to authorize the executive officer to execute contracts with 1 or more of the following entities to replace 10 heavy-duty diesel trucks for a total of up to $1 million in DERA fund from Fund 17. And those individual entities are listed above. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions, colleagues? Okay, hearing none, a motion to entertain a motion to approve item number 5.
I'll move the item.
So moved.
Oh,
Second.
public comment?
A motion and a second. Roll comment?
No public comment.
Public comment?
No public comment.
Okay. Seeing none, roll call vote on item 5.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell,
Aye.
Supervisor Perez,
Aye.
Councilmember Robinson,
Aye.
Supervisor Solis,
Aye.
Councilmember Buscaino.
Aye.
Motion passes 5 ayes.
Thank you. 2 more items, guys. 2 more items, and we are done here. Item number 6, Patricia Kwan.
Good afternoon. This item is to recognize revenue and execute agreements for the installation and maintenance of air filtration systems. So South Coast SCAQMD has executed a settlement with Rainbow Transfer and Recycling to install air filtration systems at schools. And IQR has been previously selected through several competitive bid processes and has installed air filtration at approximately 80 schools. So the proposal here would be to work with the local school district in Huntington Beach, which is near the transfer facility, to have air filtration installed at 3 schools near this site, to have air filtration in place for 5 years. These technologies will include high-performance panel filters for ultrafine PM filtration, and then gas-phase filtration with activated carbon for odor control. So the proposed schedule would be to install air filtration at these sites in the next few months, and then to issue the final report. So recommended actions would be to recognize the $250,000 settlement from Rainbow Transfer and Recycling, execute the agreement with the local school district in Huntington Beach to implement the settlement, and then execute a contract with IQR for installation of these systems, all from Fund 75. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you for that. Colleagues, any questions? Okay. Do we have any member of the public like to speak on item number 6? Hearing none. Do you have a motion to approve item 6?
I'll move the item and thank you very much for all your efforts on this.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Okay, roll call vote.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell,
Aye.
Supervisor Perez,
Aye.
Councilmember Robinson,
Aye.
Supervisor Solis. Looks like,
Supervisor Solis had to leave early.
thank you.
That's fine. Thank you.
Councilmember Buscaino,
Aye.
motion passes 4 ayes.
Thank you for that. Okay, our final item, item number 7, is a note and file item, and I'd like to have Mr. Berry present, please. Item number 7.
Good afternoon, Chairman and the rest of the committee. I will give a brief overview on our Clean Fuel program. It's a routine item we bring to our technology committee and to our board once a year. Just laying out the plan just provides an overview of the types of projects we work on. It provides descriptions for each one of these and allocates a proposal to allocate particular funds towards those. But as we've indicated before, those projects typically, when they're ready, come back to the board for their final approval. So this is just an exercise in where we think the funds may be appropriate to allocate for the next year. We have a pretty significant and established input process. We meet with our advisory groups, both the Clean Fuels Fund and the Technology Advancement Advisory Groups, twice a year, and we seek their feedback. In our meeting about a month and a half ago, we've gotten feedback from our advisors already on funds that are allocated in the manner before you today, and we continue to provide feedback and receive feedback from different entities like the Air Resources Board, California Energy Commission, DOE, EPA, and many others, as well as technology providers, as we heard earlier today, Volvo, for example. And we also continue to provide outreach and presentations at different conferences, state and national, to get feedback from them, as well as to where is the best area to focus on. Some of the drivers for Clean Fuels Fund projects continue to be some of the solicitations at the federal level, some that are at the state level, the DANZA being one example that was discussed earlier today, as well as some of the mobile source strategies in the state. The sustainable freight technology effort by the California Energy Commission and Caltrans. We continue to work locally with Los Angeles Clean Incubator and their recently adopted roadmap, LA County and their recent goals of establishing a roadmap towards zero emissions as well. We also had a brief discussion with CPUC and our local utility on their transportation electrification effort. We continue to work very closely with them as well on EVSE and specifically the rollout and how we can work with our fleets, taking advantage of some of the funds available there. And then, of course, more recently, the SB 100 adoption and how our programs can fit under that program as well. So there's a pretty broad and extensive feedback mechanism into this process. Just quick overview, the main driver, of course, internally is our air quality management plan. So our focus continues to be on port and port-related activities for the most part, but a lot of the goods movement and other types of transportation uses obviously fall under this as well. Some of the key projects, as I said, continue to focus on the zero-emission container truck development work, medium and heavy-duty fuel cell vehicles that are both trucks as well as buses, and some Class 5 delivery type vehicles. Of course, the infrastructure to support hydrogen or fuel cell and electric vehicles is a big part of our effort, as is the work on the advanced engines. And as Matt mentioned, we're working on aggressively trying to pursue the larger or heavier duty, higher horsepower on-road engines. So that's continues to be part of our focus, as well as we continue to look at a variety of different renewable fuels to see how those funds available in the state or national level can be leveraged into cleaner criteria for clean technologies. Just some highlights. As I indicated, we're continuing to work on our near zero emission engine programs to support our state and petition for the national heavy-duty engine standard, and continue to work on fuel cell and plug-in hybrid and all-electric truck technologies. In the interest of time, I'm going to go through the whole detail. This slide is just basically the proposed distribution of funds. As you can see, about 70% of the funds are allocated towards hydrogen and fuel cell technologies or their infrastructure, electric and hybrid technology, then the infrastructure, and then engine systems. The next chart shows a comparison between the board-approved plan for 2018 versus staff allocation. And, over the last 5 years, I would say that this has been fairly fine-tuned. We're not making significant changes other than the engine systems that are down about 10-15% compared to last year, so we can leverage some of the solicitations that are out there like DOE right now, and then trying to increase some funding allocations towards electrics and fuel cells to take advantage of some of the state. This is a similar illustration, just side by side in terms of percentages to illustrate that point. And I know I kind of ran through this fast, but really looking for some feedback from the committee on some of the funding distribution proposed, and looking forward to making any necessary changes and going back to our advisory group to finalize the plan.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, comments?
Just one, Mr. Chair. Could you just elaborate a little bit more on the engine systems and technologies reduction? I know you're trying to get through it quick, and I kind of see that as one of the changes year over year.
So, for example, previous years we've helped we worked in cost share development of the 8.9 liter near zero engine. We worked on the 12 liter engine. Those are of course certified. We're continuing to work with the engine developers on either smaller engines of 6.7 to 7 liter size, as well as the 13 to 15 liter engines that are very important to the long haul aspect that we discussed earlier. Those are some of the main projects. There are other ancillary component projects that also come there, such as efficiency gains that we had in those engines without really making it. So can you elaborate more on it?
Helps explain it a little bit, and then it looks like we're increasing on the infrastructure side because the technology is starting to develop, and we need to make sure that when there's more deployment out there, that we have more accessibility to fueling infrastructure side to the fair safety side. All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Thanks, Dwight. Yes, please.
can these monies be used for incentives?
Typically, these are done for pre-commercial projects. There are areas where, when it's still pre-commercial, we can use some of the funds towards some beta engine development work. So, for example, we received the California Energy Commission grant, where we're using the Clean Fuels Fund to get more experience with 12 liter engines. We started that process before it was certified, to get experience and confidence and more testing on those engines after the OEM is done. So in those gray areas, we try to use those for, I guess, a gray area between incentive funds versus redevelopment.
So typically we don't, because we have a large incentive pot of funding, but as Naveen was mentioning, sometimes there's beta prototypes that are, the engine may be certified but not fully commercialized, and so we call it early deployment. So it's our RDQ program, research, development, demonstration, and early deployment. So we can push it out and then test the marketplace. So there are cases where we have done that, when it's not, it is commercialized but not fully accepted in the marketplace yet.
And what about the infrastructure part of it? I mean, infrastructure is well established, right?
It is, but again, in the case where we don't believe the market is fully matured and we need to develop the market, then we would consider that an appropriate use.
I see. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Judy. Any others? Okay, thank you, Mr. Barry, for that report. Hearing none, it's a note and file item. With that, any other business that's before this committee? Okay, any member of the public would like to speak on an agenda item, please come forward now. Fantastic.
We have
one thing I
speaker.
ask of each, yes, one speaker?
We have one speaker here, yes.
Yes, please. Welcome.
Yeah. I'll be brief again. Erin Donne with World Energy one more time. World Energy recently purchased the Altair biorefining facility in Paramount. I know Ms. Mitchell will be joining us next week for a press event. We're very excited to have you there. But I wanted to reiterate our invitation to all of you to join us on Wednesday. At this facility, we produce 100% renewable fuels for use in diesel, jet, and gasoline engines. In 2014, we received a $5 million grant from the CEC to support the conversion of our facility. In fact, this grant has positioned us for our current success and our upcoming success. We would like to work with this committee so that we can be a shining example of innovation and new technologies as envisioned by the state. We are proud to have repurposed an old, dirty petroleum refinery and retained the workforce. We are helping achieve the goals of your Clean Fuels program with our renewable diesel and jet fuel products. That's all I have.
Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate the testimony. Okay, so one thing I ask of this committee is however you pray, how you pray, just pray for the Dodgers tonight. Thank you. We are now adjourned. Thank you so much.
Thank you.